It's breakfast time.
Mhm.
Usually we have breakfast. Maybe one day we'll get that back.
We usually do at these meetings, don't we?
Yes.
I miss that room. I've had so many different meetings in there and nice events.
Yes. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We may have a few more people hop on, but I know there was some of our normal people who joined this meeting had a couple conflicts today, but we are going to record it and make it available on our YouTube channel, which if you didn't know, we have a YouTube channel.
So the people here today are the abnormal people?
We have a few normal ones. But I just want to thank you guys for joining us today. I know we have a million things going on, and we just had a big meeting last week, which I think most of you were on, which is awesome. I do want to recognize, obviously, we have Linda here, who is our lovely chamber president. Linda, did you want to say a few words before we get started?
Well, certainly I want to welcome everybody and thank you for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate the town of Morrisville hopping on the call with us this morning to let us know how they are available to help our members. This is a very business-friendly community with amazing support by our local government. And so I really appreciate the message that you're going to share with us today. And of course, none of this could happen without sponsors. So a big thanks to Ann Close from Close HR Connections. And as always, the PTCPAs, PLLC, they diligently sponsor all of these wonderful opportunities for our members to grow and develop here in the Morrisville community. So thank you so much. And I think without further ado, Bree, I will let you take it from here and get us into the program.
Great. So as most of you know, the town of Morrisville and the Morrisville Chamber of Commerce work together to support the business community by partnering to provide information, services, to support the town's economy, which we all know is super important as we move through this weird time that we're in. The town and the chamber commonly work together to host educational events to keep the business community informed about town projects and initiatives that impact businesses, work collaboratively on significant economic development projects. And most recently, we've come together to reach out and support the business community during COVID through various outreach events, surveys, PPE distribution, and posting of business information on Facebook and the town's website, as well as all of our other social media, newsletters, things like that. The Chamber's Development Council also serves as a conduit between the town and development community to share information on a variety of development-related issues. So with that, I'm going to open the floor to Shandy Paget, and then Michelle is going to follow her up to discuss ways to be proactive and different resources that are available through the town as well as through the chamber. So Shandy, why don't
Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Shandy Paget. I'm the inspections director with the town of Morrisville. I really appreciate everybody taking their time out this morning to give Michelle and I an opportunity to talk a little bit about what our departments do and what we can do to serve you and help you out in the town of Morrisville. So the inspections department, we do all of the building permits within the town of Morrisville. So we actually administer and enforce the state building code. When we say the state building code, we are talking about many subcodes within that. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And that is actually adopted statewide by the Building Code Council. So we're all responsible within the state for enforcing the same thing. And then jurisdictions can actually have local ordinances to enhance that. Our authority to actually issue building permits and to do the subsequent inspections comes from General Statute 143 and then 160D 11.2, with 160D being our newest statute. But it requires us to have an inspections department and then tells us that all of our inspectors actually have to be certified and keep up with continuing education and things like that in order for us to be able to issue the building permits and conduct the inspections. So just a quick synopsis of what our staff does is we do issue all the permits. As part of that, we're reviewing all of the applications that are submitted maybe by you, your contractor, your maintenance staff who might be issuing or in charge of obtaining permits from us. And then we conduct plan review if that is required as part of the application. So something such as changing out a water heater, we're not going to do plan review on that. That's just going to be an application review and then subsequent permit issuance. And then all of the permits that we issue do have to have inspections completed in order for us to verify that the work that was done is in compliance with the application that was submitted, the plans that may be part of it, and then of course the corresponding codes. All of our inspection staff, they actually are certified, the inspectors themselves who do the plan review and inspections. And that certification is issued through the state qualification board. And then they have to complete continuing education to keep up with that. And they are responsible for knowing all of the technical codes. It's a lot of information. So when I said earlier, the North Carolina Building Code, here we go, huge list, right, of all this information that staff is responsible for working with. So many times you may reach out to us with a technical question and somebody will get back to you and say, let me get back with you. I need to research this a little bit. We want to make sure that we are giving you an accurate and correct answer. So you can see we've got administrative, building, plumbing, mechanical, electrical. It's an exhaustive list. And within this, staff is not just responsible for these, they have to know related standards that go with it. And standards give us additional information of how to actually do things. So it's a lot that they're working with. You'll see here that we have 2018 codes. These were effective January 1 of 2019, and we are on a 6-year code cycle. So this can really impact, let's say, a business that maybe did work without a permit and then realizes that and comes back to try and rectify that. Depending on where you fall when you come see us, there may be code changes that are now in effect from when you actually did the work. And the permit gets reviewed and evaluated on the current code. It would not be maybe when the work was done. So we do encourage, if you're not sure if you need a permit, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but our services are free to call us. We do site visits if you need to give you some advice. So please take advantage of that. And we have an incredibly responsive staff, so we're here to serve you. One of the questions we often get asked, residential permits versus commercial. So in the town here, when you apply for a permit, there's 2 categories that you'll see. It starts with residential and then you have commercial. For us, when we say residential, we are talking specifically 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhomes. It does not cover apartments. And I know you're probably thinking, but people live there, right? It's a residence. So the residential code in North Carolina is specific to 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhomes. And we have dedicated staff who are residential inspectors and reviewers. So we treat apartments as being commercial because they actually fall under that commercial building code. So once it's not a single family dwelling or a townhome, it now evolves into that next code cycle. So that's important for you because that affects permit types, what type of drawings may be required, permit cost. So I just like to make sure folks are aware if you're doing projects that are maybe apartments or hotel motel, even though folks may live there on a permanent basis, or some of our hotels, folks live there for 6 months or so, it is actually going to be a commercial permit. One of the other questions we get a lot is, I just had an inspection. I get phone calls of folks who ask me about an inspection they just had and they don't have a building permit. So there is a difference between the building permit inspections and your routine fire inspections. And we work very closely with the fire prevention department. And they do inspect and review our building permits as well. But they also have routine fire inspections that are state mandated. There is a set schedule of how often they have to come in and verify that your particular space is meeting fire and life safety codes. And even with apartments, they inspect those. They do all the interior common areas, verify fire protection systems are functional. So you will see these folks on a cyclical basis. It ranges from either every year to every 2 years, depending on your property or business type. So that is separate and distinct from the building permit. For the building department inspections, you will not see us unless you actually have a building permit. Occasionally, the fire department might ask us to come out and look at something that they notice on a fire inspection, but most of the time you'll only see our staff if you have an active building permit that we're conducting inspections for. So commercial building permits, when is a permit required? We get that question a lot. The way that the administrative code says, any work in accordance with the technical codes needs a permit. In a commercial building, most of the time, what you're going to do requires a permit. Even if you say, I just want to change out a carpet in our office because this one is outdated and we're ready to upgrade it. It actually needs a permit. And the reason is, so with carpet, we look at flame spread and the type of building you have, whether or not it's sprinklered. So things like that we often just feel like, hey, this is not a big deal, ultimately end up requiring a permit. So when in doubt, contact us first, and then we can give you some guidance. That way you don't get put in a position where maybe the work has been done. We find out that what you installed is not code compliant, because we don't want you spending money unnecessarily. Putting in an irrigation system. Signs. And signs, while there's also a building permit, there are pieces that relate to planning, and Michelle will be talking about signs as well. Accessory buildings. Sometimes our commercial folks end up needing more space, and then they may decide, we need to put up a shed or some other temporary structure. That gets reviewed not only by our department, but also planning, and may have some other code implications or requirements with that. Any modification or installation to electrical, plumbing, heating, air conditioning, all of that requires a permit. And then if there's any modification to your fire protection systems, it needs a permit. And I do want to clarify, routine maintenance does not require a permit. So for those of you who are on maybe some routine maintenance with a fire protection company to come in and service your fire sprinkler system, if they're there doing their quarterly or annually, that in and of itself does not require a permit. But at the point where maybe they have to change piping, that they have found that there's an issue, very often when we have the storms, we get fire alarm panels go out and have to be replaced. All of that would require a permit. And like I said, many more. So whenever you're in doubt or have that question, feel free to call us and we can guide you in the right direction. And with residential, there are also building permit requirements for that. Many of you live here in Morrisville. So this may be applicable to you, or if you're a landlord and you have homes here in Morrisville that you're renting out, extending your deck, adding a deck, accessory structures, converting unfinished space to occupiable space, all of that requires a permit. Lawn irrigation, solar panel, hot tubs. So lots of things with residential. It's maybe just not as inclusive as commercial. So like in residential, you change your carpet, we don't issue you a permit for that. Commercial is just a little more strict because it is open to the public and just a higher risk of life safety. One of the questions we often get too is, when is a license required? So you get notified maybe by a tenant or even within your own office space that the water heater's gone out, and how do I start reaching out to contractors? So here's when a license is required. So electrical, you install, maintain, alter, repair any electrical work, a licensed electrician. And there's a few exceptions for property owners where the property's not for rent or sale and is solely occupied that owner, but that's usually the rarity, especially in commercial, because often there's multiple tenants. It's not sole property owner. So if you think you might qualify for an exception, certainly reach out to us and we can verify with you on that. Plumbing, heating, air conditioning, sprinkler, if you alter, install, do any of that, fabricate for those systems, that's going to require a license as well. And then we often get asked, when do I need a general contractor to oversee the project? So if the project cost is $30,000 or more, a licensed general contractor is required to superintend the project. Again, we do have property owner exceptions. This exception is for both commercial and residential. So if the property owner is the sole occupant of that property, they're not going to rent or sell it in 12 months following the permit process completion. So the permit has to get finished. So if it takes 6 months, that 12-month period starts after that 6 months. You can apply to be the general contractor and act as that. When that occurs, we actually submit what is called an owner's affidavit to the license board for general contractors, so that they have record that this is why this project didn't have a licensed general contractor, somebody meets the exception. But the key, that rent or sale, a lot of times folks run into issues with that, especially homeowners who want to do their own work and superintend it, but are actively getting ready to sell the property. So just be aware of that. Here's a little bit about the workflow, because of course, everybody has projects that they want to get done. And so knowing up front what timelines you're looking at, I think is key. So when you first submit to us, we get a permit application and everything is online. So you can actually track your permits online, you request inspections online. It's nice that you don't have to come into our office for anything unless you just want to come in and say hi. Well, right now we're closed to the public, but at some point we'll be open back up and we'd love to see you then. Our permit technicians, they're the administrative staff who are going to review your application and then get back with you of any additional items that might be needed. The plan review is 10 business days. If you don't have plans and you're just an application review, so let's say a water heater change out, it's 2 business days. And the reason that we ask for 2 business days is because our inspectors most of the time are in the field during the day. So if your application comes in the morning and they've been in the field all day, they may not be able to get to it that day and it'll be the next day. So that's why there's that 2-day wait period. Luckily though, because emergencies do happen. So for example, the mechanical code allows when there is an emergency repair of such as a water heater, that contractor can do the work as long as they reasonably come to us and obtain that application within a short amount of time. So emergencies happen and we're not telling you, you got to go without hot water. You know, we understand that, so does the code, and we can work with that. When we do that plan review, when it's required, it's many different departments involved. So it's not just my department. So we've got inspections, planning, engineering, stormwater, fire, town of Cary, Wake County. Lots of groups are involved. The nice thing is with our online system, you can see where is each department at in the process. So if you're wondering, I know my due date is in 10 days, you might pop in on day 2 and see that somebody's already done and may have comments. So you can go ahead and start working to address that. So that's nice that you have that very transparent system to tell you exactly where you're at. If you have to resubmit, it is 5 business days that staff will take to review that. Once you've rectified any plan review comments, that permit's going to be issued and then fees are paid for the permit. With the inspection process, we offer next day services. So if that inspection is requested by 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock's our cutoff time, we will get you in the next business day. The only exception is if we have an unusually high workload and the schedule is already full. With our commercial work, everything is appointment based. So you know when staff is coming. So that's pretty nice. You don't have to get this 4-hour window of it might be 8 to 12. We'll let you know. We're going to tell you it's 9 o'clock. So that is, we find, is really helpful to contractors and everybody alike so that they can all be at the right place at the right time. And then once all that is done, the certificate of occupancy or compliance is issued. So expired permits. We really see these start to come to a head when a property is being sold and then there's assessment inquiries or, you know, banks are looking into if there's building code violations. Expired permits. So when the permit's issued, there are 6 months to get the first inspections done. Once the first inspection is done, you have 1 year and then every year after to get an inspection done. So a project could take a while, we recognize that. But where we see the issues is somebody will not realize there was still an inspection they didn't finish and they thought they were done. The property goes up for sale and then we start getting phone calls of, hey, you told these folks that I've got 8 outstanding permits. I didn't realize it. So I always encourage stay up to date with your permit. The contractors are super busy as well. They may have missed a step. So with that new software system and you being able to see what's happening, you can go in and see, did I miss an inspection? Did the CO actually get issued? You have access to all the documents. I just think this is a critical piece that often creates havoc for business owners later. They just didn't realize a permit did not get finished. They did the right thing, contacted somebody, had a licensed contractor get the permit. And then years later, we find out, oops, it expired. And with expired permits, you'll have to get a new permit to rectify whatever work was already started. And if we had a code cycle change, we may not be able to let you go back and use the old code. That new permit would fall under the new code and could end up being costly. So you want to try to get it wrapped up while that permit is valid and active. So just a few of our FAQs. Yes, you can view your permit status. Like I said, this software, it's amazing. You can view everything online. You can view staff comments. You can see what inspection corrections there may have been. It gives you projected timelines. Do you owe fees? So I'm really happy that we have an opportunity to allow you to be able to see your permit 24/7. You don't have to wait till Monday at 8 o'clock when office hours are open to be able to find out what's my permit status. Inspections are scheduled online. This was a big step. We used to have a phone line. You had to call, leave a voicemail, we check the voicemail, call you back, and then hope you answered so we could try to schedule. Now you send it right online and we set your time and everything right online. So it's pretty great. And then, as I said, your inspections, if you get it in by 2 o'clock, we'll get you the next day. If it's after 2 that you call, it'll be 2 business days out. Are there any questions I can answer? Or Bree, do you want me to wait until Michelle's done? I'm fine either way.
We can go ahead, and if anybody has any questions right now for Shandy, go ahead and ask them. If you think of more later, that's completely fine as well. And if we, yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. I'm a resident of Morrisville, so I appreciate that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Shandy, I have a question. I don't know if you would even know this, but I know a lot of us live outside of Morrisville and work in Morrisville and whatnot. But do you know the cohesiveness of like this type of information around towns, like if you're in Raleigh or if you're in Garner, if you're in Fuquay?
Yeah, great question. So we all talk. In fact, there's a group of us inspections directors that when we've got issues or questions, you know, because we try to be consistent. But every jurisdiction may have their own local ordinances that exceed the minimum code requirements. So one of the things you'll notice whenever you contact us, the first question I always ask is, what's the address? Because a lot of times we get an address that says Morrisville, but it may be Cary, Apex, Raleigh. So I want to make sure I don't send you down the wrong path with giving you information here that may not be applicable to one of our neighbors. But we are all using the same codes. But you saw the volume of text that was there. You could get a different interpretation. We all try to be consistent, but certainly in a 500-page book, I may see it one way, somebody else interprets another way. And often we do hear that, you know, they don't require me to do that in, let's say, Garner. But one of the things that I will do is I will reach out to that jurisdiction because maybe we have an area of opportunity in Morrisville or something we didn't realize. And so we try to keep a very good open working relationship with everybody because we want our process to be good. So there is very good networking. We don't all use the same software, so you'll have a different experience of how you apply, track your permit, and things like that.
Anyone else have any questions before we head over to Michelle?
Thank you, everybody.
All right, if you think of any, feel free to ask them. All right, so Michelle, I'm gonna share screen.
Okay, and thank you for that, Bree.
Yeah, no problem. Whenever you're ready, and go for it. If you can see the screen, good.
So thank you again. Just a little bit of an overview about the planning department. It's a staff of 12 people. I'm very lucky to have a talented team of staff working in the department. And as Shandy indicated, planning works very closely with both inspections and engineering. And actually, when we're in the office, Shandy's office is almost right next door to mine. So we see each other quite frequently and try and keep the process kind of from start to finish, from plan review all the way through inspection and occupancy as smooth as possible for all of you. In the planning department, we are responsible for development review, long-range planning. Long-range planning includes our comprehensive plan, which is our transportation plan, our land use plan, our active kids recreation plan, and a number of other plans. We work with our regional transportation agencies and NCDOT on large road projects, and we're also responsible for code enforcement. Today, though, I want to focus with all of you on a recent update that the town just completed to its sign code. go over kind of some of the major changes with the update and a little bit about the reason behind the update. So Bree, if you could go to the next slide. So the sign code update was really prompted by a Supreme Court decision in Reed v. Town of Gilbert, which some of you may or may not have heard of. It really turned on its head the way communities across the country regulate signage. What the Reed decision said was that a municipality cannot regulate signage based on the content of its sign. And if you look at codes across the country, it was very common to see categories such as a garage sale sign or a contractor sign or a business promotional sign. And with the Reed decision, those kinds of regulations were determined to be content-based and illegal. And so we did have some of those types of regulations in our code. And so that was an issue that we needed to address at the town of Morrisville. It's an issue that communities across the country are addressing. So we were lucky enough that our town council approved a contract for us to work with a consultant to complete the update. They did approve a new code in December, and that code went into effect on February 1st. So just a little bit over a week ago. If you go to the next slide. Before we began the update, we did reach out to a number of our stakeholders, and we circled back with them kind of repeatedly throughout the process. One of the things that we heard was that our old regulations were generally acceptable and that our sign code was generally fair and reasonable. And so what we took from that was that this really wasn't a project that the town probably would be undertaking if it wasn't for the Reed decision. So we took that to heart, and as we were completing the update, tried to keep our regulations as similar today as to what they were before the update. We weren't able to do that in every case. This really was a complete rewrite of the code. It was looking at and defining signs differently, but we did our best to keep the regulations similar to what they had been. So next slide. So the table that you see on the right is a table from the old code. And you'll see that we regulated signs first by zoning district and then by use. And so there are different groupings of zoning districts. For the most part, those zoning district groupings stayed the same. However, I'm going to point you to the column where you see NAC, TOD, and MS. We did make some changes to that grouping. So the MS district is our Main Street district. That's where we're looking to create a town center. Really thought that the sign regulations in that area should be different and unique based on the unique character and look and feel that we want to create in that area. And then the NAC, or Neighborhood Activity Center, really felt like that was being developed out very similar to some of our other commercial areas and activity centers. So in the NAC district, you have Bethany Village, you have Grace Park. So we moved the NAC and actually the TOD regulations into the grouping with the other more commercial uses and create something separate for the Main Street district. As you go down that column, I'm also going to point you to, you'll see that we're regulating also by use. So there's institutional use, office use, and some other uses across there. So if you were, for example, an institutional use in the NAC district, you could get 32 square feet of signage. But if you were an office use, you got 12 square feet. Similarly, if you go over to the PGO VLDR heading, if you were an institutional use, you could have a sign that was 10 feet high. If you were an office use, you could have a sign that was 5 feet high. What the Reed decision also said was when we're talking about content-based regulations, we can no longer regulate based on the type of business. So as we were going through the update, we had a lot of decisions to make. Do we go with the 32 square feet or the 12 square feet or somewhere in the middle? In most cases, we went with the higher allowance. And I will say in most, that's not the case in every single situation. But we tried to give the benefit of the doubt to the higher allowance with the goal of making as few signs non-conforming as possible. But throughout the code, we had those decisions to make repeatedly. If you could go to the next slide, Bree. So this is a table out of the new code that went into effect on February 1st. You can see some changes to those district groupings at the top. Again, kind of taking the Main Street district out as its separate district and moving the NAC TOD over into the more commercial category. We also tried to make the code a little bit more user-friendly. We did incorporate more into table format. We put the definition of the sign right under the sign type, and we've incorporated images throughout to kind of give you an idea of at least what we were thinking, what you might want to intend to use a sign for. So as you go through the code, and this applies to both our permanent signs and our temporary signs, you'll see things like ground mounted sign type A. We also have a type B and a type C because a ground mounted sign is a ground mounted sign regardless of the message. So those definitions right underneath those images, I think have become even more important in those cases. We also took a lot of the residential standards and built them into the table as well. Those used to be in a separate section of the code, but you'll see with this kind of regrouping of signs, we don't have that distinction anymore between an institutional use and an office use. It's residential, all other, and we also included a mixed use category after talking with our project attorney. So once again, no longer regulating by the business use. Could you go to the next slide, Bree? Where we probably saw the most changes was with our temporary signs, because those were the ones where we really did have a fair number of content-based regulations. So in the table, you'll see a lot of the sign categories that were in the old code. A sale sign, a gas pump sign, a special event sign, a real estate sign, open house sign, contractor sign. We can no longer use those categories anymore because they define the sign based on what the sign says. And so all of those sign categories are now gone, and they were replaced with new categories such as yard sign, swing sign, sidewalk sign. In the planning world, we kind of refer to that as a time, manner, and place regulations, where you're regulating the sign based on its physical characteristics as opposed to the message of the sign or what the sign says. So if you go to the next slide. So this is again a table out of the new code. You could say, once again, we've tried to put everything in that kind of customer-friendly table format where you could kind of easily see what the regulations are. Again, yard sign, we have 3 different types of yard signs now. A yard sign A, a yard sign B, and a yard sign C. And this is obviously yard sign A from the code. This was intended to replace what used to be your contractor sign or your construction sign. So if you look at the maximum duration, it's from issuance of construction plan approval to issuance of a certificate of occupancy. So if you want to make use of, a sign this size, this area, this height, you need to have active construction going on your property. We do have a yard sign B and a yard sign C as well. I will say those are your smaller signs that you maybe want to stick in the ground on your own potentially residential property to advertise a garage sale or a student graduating from school or whatever message you might want to put on it. We also did with the new code with your temporary signs, you'll see that we now have permitted materials. So with each temporary sign type, it will tell you what materials are permitted. And I'll go back to the yard sign B and the yard sign C. They have a similar area allowance. Both could be up to 4 feet in height, 6 square feet in area. But if it's made of higher quality, more durable materials, you could have it out on your property longer. So, and that was kind of consistent through the temporary sign regulations, that the more durable the material, the longer it could be on the property. Would also just like to point out and remind everyone, as we're talking about temporary sign regulations, that with COVID-19, the town council did approve a temporary suspension on the requirement to obtain a temporary sign permit. So normally, if you're going to put up one of these types of signs, not all of them, but most of them do require you to get a sign permit ahead of time. Right now, if you tried to go online to our online customer portal and apply for a temporary sign permit, it would not allow you to do that, because in order to work with the business community, the town council has said that we're not going to require those permits right now. We're in unique times. People are doing delivery and curbside pickup, and hours are changing, and a lot of other things are happening. Probably not the best use of staff time right now to be reviewing a large volume of temporary signs, and it's an easy way to work with the business community. So that hold is still in place, and we anticipate that it will continue for some time still. And also, you know, when we did go ahead and approve that hold, you know, we did ask for the business community's cooperation in not using a lot of flag signs or feather signs or moving signs. Those could be distracting to drivers, and just, you know, we were trying to maintain that high quality image of the town. And I think the business community has done a great job cooperating with us on that. So thank you. Bree, if you could go to the next slide. There were some additional changes that we did make with the update. Not very fancy, but we did strengthen the purpose section of the code, which was important. We updated pretty much all of our sign regulations. The new code does prohibit pole signs. We don't have a lot of them around town, but if you do have an existing pole sign, if you go to replace the face of that sign, you will be required to replace it now with a ground sign. And there are other triggers there that may require you to bring that sign into conformance. We are prohibiting all non-government signs in the right-of-way. And really the idea there is if we allowed it for one, we had to open up the rights-of-way and allow it for all. So the decision was to only allow the rights-of-way to be used for government signage. Also requiring landscaping around the base of all ground signs. And then if you are familiar with our special event permit process, you may know that with that permit, there are often also a number of sub-permits that you need to obtain. And one of those used to be a sign permit, and you were allowed up to 6 temporary signs to go along with your special event. We have gotten rid of that requirement for the separate sign permit. So we're still going to ask you for information with your special event permit application about the number of signs and the types of signs and where they're going to be located, but no longer requiring a separate permit to be submitted for those signs. They will just be reviewed overall as part of that special event application. And then again, really trying to enhance the customer experience, trying to put more in table format and really put more images and illustrations in the code to help provide examples of what's intended by those regulations. So that is it. Hope that helps everyone a little bit, provides at least a little bit of background about the new code update. But obviously, if anyone has any questions, you know, as Shandy indicated with her inspection items, you know, please reach out. We're always here. We'd rather get the phone call than be dealing with it on the flip end because something was done that didn't comply. But we're here to answer your questions whenever you have them.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Does anyone have any questions for Michelle or Shandy right now?
I just want to jump in and say that I know how much the businesses appreciate your flexibility during this pandemic time for them to put up signage, promoting their takeout services or whatever the case may be, to help them out. And that's been much appreciated by the businesses. I'm a little curious if there's any similar provisions for businesses located, say, near road construction sites or anything of that nature.
No, we don't have anything like that right now, no.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment that I'm glad that this is being recorded so that the chamber can put this out so other people can benefit from these presentations at their time whenever they want. So I think that's great.
Yeah, extremely informative. I learned a great deal, and it's very, very useful and helpful knowledge. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Michelle, I did have one question. If there was a link to that new updated signage code that we could access it.
Yes, if you go onto the website, go to the home page to plans and ordinances, and then click on Unified Development Ordinance. The code is actually part of the Unified Development Ordinance, so you'll need to find the sign code chapter. I think it's chapter 5.16, but it is online and available.
Did anyone else have any other questions right now? All right. So I would like to, this is going to be sent out to all of you afterwards, but I want to go over some of these business links that Wake County has, Town of Morrisville has, the Chamber has, as well as other partners in our organization. So Wake County, especially for small businesses, there's so many resources that I feel like I learn a new one every day. So I want to make sure that all of you know there's way more than what I have listed, but this is from Wake County. So both of these, there's the Doing Business homepage as well as the business resources. Let's see if it's gonna let me, there we go. So this is the business resources doing business through Wake County. So you're going to get all of this information if you want a specific task. They lay it out super simple for you. And then they also obviously have all the COVID related, anything else going on through Wake County as a whole. And then if we go to the Town of Morrisville, let's see if it's going to open. All right. Did this pop up as the Town of Morrisville homepage? Do you see that? Maybe? No. Yes. Okay. Perfect. And so this is business resource links through the Town of Morrisville. So this is going to be specific to doing business in Morrisville, but we have our community leaders tips and resources for the local economy, COVID, different programs and economic resources, small loans, CARES Act. This is everything that's been going on with COVID. But then I'm also going to send you just the regular, their business community support page as well. And so this is going to get more into that survey that we were talking about, making sure that the town of Morrisville, as well as the chamber who are partnering in these surveys, is doing as much as we can to support all of our small businesses to keep our economy going strong, to keep growing our economy, and hopefully get back to where we were pre-COVID sooner rather than later. So this is again going to have some different resources on economic relief, as well as just doing business in Morrisville. So those are some of the big ones, but then I know we had Gareth come and talk about this with us, but I just want to reiterate that we have such an incredible higher education system that we have in the Triangle area, with Wake Tech being in RTP and in Morrisville. So really utilizing their free programs that they offer, which is one of them is the Small Business Center. We have free resources, counseling, programs, seminars for anyone in the Morrisville community. Some of them you might have to pay for, but to my knowledge, none of them are extensive for what you're looking for to get those resources that you need. So definitely getting involved in Wake Tech, talking to somebody from their small business center is going to provide you with most of the resources in partnership with the town, the chamber websites that are going to help you stay proactive and keep planning for the future. So I'm going to stop sharing and stop talking, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion period. Thank you, TJ, for sending that side code link. It's very helpful. And so moving forward, the purpose of this specific talk is obviously being proactive in your business and knowing what you need to be doing in regards to town regulations. As Shandy mentioned, you don't want to do all of this work and then be like, oh crap, I'm on the wrong code here. And then the same with, I don't want to create this sign that I no longer can use because of updated signage codes. So I just want you guys to take a second and just think about how you're being proactive in your business. How are you making sure that you're attaining the level of moving forward that you need to continue to grow your business? And if anybody wants to chime in just how you're being proactive or how your company is being proactive, maybe just have some great discussion period right now. And maybe you guys can touch a little bit to what the town is doing and how you guys are being proactive in times of COVID and helping the businesses outside of what we've already talked about.
If I could just go back and emphasize something that Shandy indicated during her presentation. I know just on a personal level, when I hire someone to do work on my house, it's easy just to say, okay, you're handling all the permits. And just to not pay any attention to it from that point on. And whether it's a planning project or an inspection project, I would highly recommend that you ask the professionals you've hired to add you as a contact on your permit or plan application. They often are the ones handling the submission of those permits for you through our online system. But if you ask them to add you as a contact, that's what's going to allow you to be able to go on and monitor and see the comments and track and see what's going on with those reviews. And just something that I would, emphasize that Shandy brought up.
And would that mean that the resident would actually receive the emails as well? Would they be CC'd? Okay, so that's very useful to know that everything's on the up and up.
That's great advice.
Because ultimately it's the resident's problem if anything goes wrong when they try to sell the house and it's discovered later.
And I'll add too to that. One of the things we've got, and I'll put the link in the chat of how to get to this customer service portal, just so you can at least go in, get a feel for it. There's a public record search on there as well. So maybe if you're looking to buy a home in Morrisville and you want to be proactive to look, you can run an address and verify, are there open permits, or maybe you're looking to buy a commercial property. So that's a really nice feature, that information is at your fingertips. One thing though, I do just want to add, so we went live with this system in December of 2019. So the data in here is 2019 from that December and forward. So if you have other projects or old, properties that you want us to look into, you'll need to reach out to us directly to search the prior records management systems to get that for you. We did not transfer that data.
That's great advice. Is anybody else have any tips or tricks to being proactive in business, or if you plan on selling your house, anything like that? All right, and then one last question I want to pose to you guys is, what can you or what are you doing now to prepare for the next 6 months? So this goes into that proactivity, but in times of COVID, we know that we have to pivot at the snap of your fingers. So having those backup plans and having those plan A's, B's, C's all the way as far as you want is super important. So what are you doing, whether it's personally, whether it's in your business, to prepare for the next 6 months in whatever direction we go? Thankfully, we do have a little bit more of an understanding and we have a light at the end of the tunnel, but we still don't know what this post-COVID life is going to look like exactly. So does anybody want to chime in and kind of what you are doing to prepare for the next 6 months?
This is more fun than anything, but we just got a new dog and we're putting invisible fencing up. So over the next 6 months, the dog will be able to go outside without us having to have him on a leash to keep him safe. So that's something.
Yeah, that's great.
Bree, I'll add something that the town is doing, and I'm going to put the link in here as well. So one of the things that we recognized with the upcoming vaccination and additional test sites is a need to maybe consolidate how we're handling those, because they do most of the time require a special event permit. So we have actually created this website link on the town's page that has all the steps that you're going to need to do if your business is going to be hosting one of those sites and it occurs outside of the building. If it's inside, we really don't have any say with that, but things that you're setting up outside or might impact traffic flow and things like that. We put together this to give you all those key steps and the flow of that. And then there's also a nice little timeline down the right-hand side so you can kind of see how long will this take and what is the entire process. So we hope that will help folks out. We wanted to be proactive in that measure rather than waiting till we got the first one, and we want to go ahead and get ahead of that. So
that's awesome, Shandy. I think that's going to be super important, and I'm going to make sure that I share that out to everyone, because I think that so many people want to do something and they don't know how.
In order to be able to be more flexible, staff brought forth something to the council just last night to adjust the UDO to give more flexibility for vaccination sites and testing and stuff within town. So we appreciate that. That goes into effect pretty much immediately.
Awesome.
Going back to signage, obviously, again, during COVID, we're trying to work with everyone, particularly with that hold on the temporary sign permits. However, I think we all hope that, normal isn't too far away. I think it probably is months. So I don't know if the statement's going to apply to the next 6 months or not. We'll just have to wait and see. But there will be a time when, signs need to be brought back into conformance and the normal code will apply. And so as the resolution is currently written, that hold on those permits goes, throughout the state of emergency. But when that's lifted, giving people 60 days to bring everything back into conformance. At that time, you will see our code enforcement officer out doing some rounds, sending out notices, working with people to take down those, we'll call them at that time, illegal signs, and kind of return things to normal. So as COVID, hopefully starts to take a turn for the better and we start returning to normal, being proactive in picking up some of those signs might be something that people might want to look to start doing, because there will come a time when we're doing that sweep.
Yeah, and along with that is being proactive in what is your plans after these signs are taken away. Margaret, did you have something to add? I saw that you posted something in the chat, which was awesome, but if you want to say anything, go for it.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I was actually on the topic of signage to be able to stay as within the correct, although we are not getting a permit for temporary signage, to make sure that we are posting them so we don't have to move in things. Who would be the best person to reach out for that? So we have some big signs that are going in and we need to know like how far from the ground they need to be, or how far from the road they need to be. Is that still something that we can reach out to you all for? Or who would be the best, what's the best source to do that?
Yes, absolutely. Marty Saunders, our planning technician, handles all of our sign permits. So I think her number is 463-6188. But you could reach out to me as well and we'll get you to the appropriate contact and get you the information that you need.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we're trying to stay as compliant as possible so that we don't have to go back and do anything other than fill out the paperwork.
Proactivity, I love it. All right. Does anyone else have anything to add to our conversation? Tips, tricks, resources? I think it is super important to add to just kind of keep your folder of resources handy, especially since everything is changing. So those resources can be links that I'll be sending you, email addresses, phone numbers to people at the town, chamber, Wake County, or just maybe pertinent clients that you work with on a regular basis that maybe their business is being affected by all of the different changes that are happening. So if you don't have a folder, whether it be physical or on your computer, Google Docs is a great place to hold things, then I suggest making one. So just having, maybe it starts with this document that I'm going to send you after this, but just having that sheet of, okay, I need to find whatever that new signage code is. So I have the link right here. I know exactly where it's at. That's going to cut out a lot of that middle ground of, I have no clue where to start on ripping up carpet in my commercial space, if you already have that link to at least have that starting point. All right, any other things anybody wants to add? We can just have some great conversation, or we can go on with our daily lives. I know we are all super busy, so I'm going to leave that up to you guys. If you'd like to have a conversation, go for it. If not, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank our sponsors, Close HR Connections, PTCPA's PLLC. I've gotten really good at saying that over the past couple of months. And then I do want to make you aware of our upcoming events. So hopefully we can see that. Tuesday the 16th, that's next week, we have our rescheduled Power of Inclusion event. So this is going to be on generational diversity. We have 2 adjunct professors from Campbell University speaking from the law school, and it should be great. It's going to be great information on working with diverse teams, specifically generationally diverse teams. Obviously, our boomer generation is a lot different than our Gen X generation, but we all have something to contribute that can propel our businesses moving forward. The day after that, Wednesday, the 17th, is our Kindness Day. So if you don't know what this is just a social media campaign that we started last year. We do it once a year. But if you have anything that you do that day, whether it's buy coffee for your coworker, even if your coworker is your spouse, snap a picture, post it on Instagram, tag us in it. We just want to spread that happiness, kindness, positivity throughout the Morrisville community. So it starts with one act of kindness to propel an entire movement. So especially in today's day and age, a little bit of positivity can go a long way. So I encourage you all to jump on board with that social media campaign next week. In a month, March 10th, we have our first No event of the year. This is going to be a great event. Our overarching theme for the year is women leading. I feel like that is a huge, awesome accomplishment that we have seen in our federal government lately, but also locally. So this is going to be women leading in service. We are focusing on all of the different nonprofit and civic organizations in the Morrisville community. So we're going to have a great panel of women leading in these service organizations and some great networking conversations as well. And then the end of March, we will have our coffee and connections with a shot of espresso. So definitely add all 4 of these dates to your calendar. If you haven't registered already, make sure you do that. I will send you the links for them. Kindness Day, you don't have to register for, but I highly suggest that you post something on any of your social media and tag us in it throughout the day next week. Other than that, that is all I have for you guys today. I've talked a lot, so I will send this out. This is also, like I said, this was recorded, so we are going to, I'm going to take little snippets from what Shandy and Michelle shared with us and get it on some social media. Do a little did you know post, try to get this information out into our community. So thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thanks, Bree.
Thanks, guys.